took an oath of allegiance while clothed in a uniform bearing the insignia of the United States. They put their lives on the line, and then the United States kicked them out. Veterans of the U.S. military who were lawful permanent residents or green card holders have been permanently expelled from the United States for committing crimes. This take no prisoners stance stems from the Immigration and Nationality Act. The law, passed by Congress in 1996, made it easier to deport people who were in the country legally. Legal permanent residents could be deported if they committed a class of crimes only applicable to immigrants, called aggravated felonies. Many are then separated from their families and forced to return to a country they no longer know. Now, no one knows exactly how many veterans have been deported because the Department of Homeland Security says it doesn't keep those records, and neither do other government agencies. But according to Banished Veterans, a group formed to help deportees, at least hundreds and perhaps thousands have been deported in recent years. Deported veterans, some of whom are decorated and wounded, remain absent from the very loud and very visible debate in Washington over immigration reform. And while we wait for the courts to decide whether the U.S. will take on a realistic, family-friendly path toward immigration reform, we must ask, should the people who risk their lives to defend this country be forced to leave it? Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Craig Shagan, an immigration lawyer. And joining us via Skype from Belize is Kevin Martinez, a U.S. Army veteran who was himself deported. And thanks to both of you for joining us. And I want to start with you, Kevin. Can you tell us what triggered your deportation?
Yes. What triggered my deportation was a simple battery case that I had when my ex-wife and I got into a domestic dispute. Following that dispute, I spent a year in Korea, basically, doing the work for the military. Came back from Korea, continued to work as a civilian, that is, continued to work, and was going about my daily work. I came to Belize on vacation, and upon returning to the U.S., I was stopped by a customs officer who told me then that I was deported in absentia. And it kind of threw me for a loop because, I had no idea that I was going to be deported,
And Kevin, can I ask you how long ago that was? How long have you been in Belize, and how long have you been separated from your family that's here in the U.S.?
December will make 11 years, to be exact. December 2nd, exactly.
Okay, I want to turn to you, Craig, because as Kevin describes essentially the triggering event, because these are not random deportations, these are actually deportations that are triggered by an arrest. So why should the United States not deport, even if they were a lawful immigrant who is arrested for a crime?
Well, in my view, you deport people not because for punishment. You deport people because they have failed to live up to their obligation for their status in the United States, and they are still aliens. However, once they enter the military, they take an oath of allegiance to the United States. As you pointed out in the intro, they are literally clothed in the emblems and insignias of the United States. They are subject to the military code of conduct, which tells them that they are fighting in the forces that defend their country and their way of life, and they are prepared to give their life in that defense. When they're overseas, they are subject to the Status of Forces Agreement, which treats them as American nationals. If they get shot at or they get arrested, captured by the enemy, they are treated as Americans who are then prisoners of war in a foreign country. They're not treated as Mexican Americans or Italian Americans or English Americans. So since we, for all intents and purposes, treat them when they're in uniform as American nationals, I don't think that status should change when the uniform comes off. So if
Well, and I should point out that a lot of people may not know, and the producers of this show, I learned something today in the meetings running up to this show, that lawful permanent residents were actually conscripted, drafted into the wars, the Civil War, both of our World War wars, as well as Korea and Vietnam. But I want to go back to you, Kevin, and ask you a version of the same question. You took an oath, and you also were subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You knew those rules. You knew the laws. Why should you not be subject to deportation if, in fact, you did commit a crime, a simple battery?
Well, I believe I paid the ultimate price as a citizen. Even though I'm not a citizen of the United States, I think I went far and beyond what some have gone, you know?
Well, and I want to come back out to the table because, Elise, I know you're working on a case right now trying to help a veteran of the United States military to stave off or to fight deportation. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I mean, I think most Americans would just be horrified by the system of justice that we have for immigrants that really have no due process, no right to a lawyer. Immigration judges have been robbed of their ability to weigh any of the humanity of the person or their contributions to society, like their military service. So I've been working with someone named Howard Bailey, who came on a green card when he was 17, served in the Persian Gulf Wars, was honorably discharged, and applied for citizenship, where he disclosed that he had a prior marijuana offense from 10 years earlier. In the meantime, he had built 2 businesses, owned his home, had his family, and he was deported. And the immigration judge was not allowed to weigh anything in his life, like not even the fact that he honorably served in our military before ordering his deportation. And he's actually in Jamaica right now, and we've been trying to bring him back, but the federal government has not been cooperating.
Yeah, and I want to give you the last word, Kevin. Make your case to Americans who may be skeptical about this idea of people like yourself, even though you clearly served this country and, as you said, did much, very honorable service to the country. What would you tell lawmakers in Washington who are looking at a case like yours? What would you like to see them do?
What I would like for lawmakers to do is to weigh. I mean, I understand veterans do commit crimes, but to weigh the crime, I think my punishment doesn't fit the crime that I committed. You know, I think that I'm serving it's like a maximum sentence that I'm serving.